Welcome, my amazing friends. Yesterday, I shared part 1 of World War II, where I explained why this terrible war started and how Hitler manipulated millions of people with his words, his ideas, and his power. He made people believe in something dangerous, something that led to the most destructive war in human history. If you haven't watched that video yet, go and watch it now. Because to truly understand how this war ended, you first need to know why it began. But today, my friends, we move forward. Today, I bring you part 2, the end of World War II. This is not just a story of war. It is a story of courage, sacrifice, destruction, and hope. A story of how nations fought, how millions of lives were lost, and how the world finally put an end to this nightmare. This war changed everything. It shaped the world we live in today. It taught us lessons that we must never forget. And in this video, I will take you through every important event that led to the end of this war. The battles, the strategies, the victories, and the losses. So, watch till the end, because this is not just history. It is knowledge, it is power, and it is a lesson for all of us. This is going to be intense, emotional, and deeply informative. And as you listen, you will not only learn about history, but also improve your English listening skills in the most interesting way. In part 1, we saw how Hitler broke every rule, how he manipulated people, and how he prepared for war while the world stayed silent. Then, on September 1st, 1939, Hitler finally made his move. He invaded Poland. And just 2 days later, on September 3rd, 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany. But in the early months of the war, something shocking happened. Hitler seemed unstoppable. He crushed nations one by one with terrifying speed. His army was powerful. His soldiers were fearless, and the world had never seen anything like his strategy before. This was called Blitzkrieg, or the Lightning War. It was a new way of fighting. Instead of slow battles that lasted for months, Hitler's army moved fast. Planes bombed cities first, creating chaos. Then tanks rolled in, destroying everything in their path. Finally, soldiers stormed in, finishing the job. By the time the enemy could react, it was already too late. Poland falls in just 27 days. Hitler's attack on Poland was brutal. In just 27 days, Poland surrendered. Warsaw, the capital, was destroyed. Civilians were killed in the streets. Polish soldiers fought bravely, but they were no match for Hitler's powerful army. Britain and France had promised to help Poland, but by the time they reacted, Poland was already gone. And there was something even worse. Hitler was not alone. Remember the Nazi-Soviet pact? Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, had agreed to divide Poland with Hitler. So, just 16 days after Germany attacked, the Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east. Poland was trapped between two powerful enemies. It never had a chance. By October 6th, 1939, Poland no longer existed. The world was in shock, but Hitler wasn't going to stop. From October 1939 to April 1940, there was almost no fighting in Western Europe. This period was called the Phony War, because even though Britain and France had declared war, they did nothing. They were preparing, waiting, hoping that maybe Hitler would stop. But Hitler had other plans. While Britain and France waited, Germany was secretly preparing for the next attack. And then, in April 1940, the silence was broken. On April 9th, 1940, Hitler launched a surprise attack on Norway and Denmark. Denmark surrendered in just 6 hours. It was one of the fastest defeats in history. Norway tried to fight back, but within 2 months, it was also defeated. Now Hitler controlled both countries, giving him access to important ports and resources. The world finally realized this was only the beginning. Britain and France were sure that Hitler would never be able to invade France. Why? Because France had the strongest defense in the world, the Maginot Line. The Maginot Line was a massive wall of fortresses built along the French-German border. It had huge guns, underground tunnels, and thousands of soldiers. The French believed that Germany could never break through it. But Hitler didn't even try. Instead of attacking the Maginot Line, Hitler did something unexpected. He went through Belgium. On May 10, 1940, Germany launched a massive attack on Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. The Blitzkrieg strategy was in full force. Planes bombed cities. Tanks rolled in at lightning speed. Soldiers stormed through towns and villages. In just 5 days, the Netherlands surrendered. In 18 days, Belgium fell. Now France was exposed. Then Hitler did something even more shocking. He sent his army through the Ardennes forest. The Ardennes was a dense mountainous forest in Belgium and France. The French thought it was impossible for an army to pass through. But Hitler proved them wrong. In just 5 days, German tanks broke through the Ardennes and reached the French border. The Maginot Line was useless. The German army had bypassed it completely. Now Hitler's army rushed toward Paris. France was falling. As the Germans moved deeper into France, British and French soldiers were trapped in the town of Dunkirk. They had their backs to the sea. If Hitler attacked now, he could wipe out the entire British army. But then, something unbelievable happened. Britain launched Operation Dynamo, a massive rescue mission. From May 26th to June 4th, 1940, hundreds of British ships, including fishing boats, private yachts, and even small rowboats, sailed across the English Channel to rescue the soldiers. In just 10 days, they saved over 338,000 British and French soldiers. This became known as the Miracle at Dunkirk. Even though Britain lost a lot of equipment, it saved its army, and that meant it could continue the fight. But for France, there was no miracle. On June 10, 1940, the French government fled Paris. And just 4 days later, on June 14, 1940, German troops marched into Paris. The city of lights and love had fallen to darkness. And then, on June 22, 1940, France officially surrendered to Germany. Hitler had done what no one thought was possible. He had crushed France in just 6 weeks. To celebrate his victory, Hitler did something that humiliated France. He forced the French to sign the surrender document in the same railway carriage where Germany had surrendered at the end of World War I in 1918. It was Hitler's way of getting revenge. Now Germany controlled almost all of Europe. But one enemy still stood strong: Britain. And Hitler was about to launch his biggest attack yet. It was July 1940, and Hitler had already taken control of most of Europe. Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France had all fallen to his army. Britain was the last major country still fighting against him. But Hitler believed Britain would soon surrender. After all, he had one of the strongest armies in the world. His soldiers were fearless, his tanks were unstoppable, and his air force, the Luftwaffe, was the most powerful in Europe. There was only one problem. Britain was an island. Hitler could not send his tanks into Britain the way he had in France. The only way to defeat Britain was to first destroy its air force. This led to one of the most important battles in history, the Battle of Britain. Hitler believed that if he sent thousands of planes to bomb British cities, the people would become scared. They would beg their government to surrender, and without an air force, Britain would be weak, allowing Hitler to invade easily. In July 1940, Hitler gave the order. Every day, German bombers flew over Britain, dropping thousands of bombs. Their targets were airfields, destroy the British planes before they could even take off. Factories, stop Britain from building new planes. Radar stations, so Britain couldn't detect incoming attacks. The British Royal Air Force, RAF, was outnumbered. Germany had more planes, more pilots, and more experience. But Britain had one advantage: radar. Radar allowed the British to detect exactly where German planes were coming from. This meant British fighters could be ready before the bombs even dropped. The battle in the skies was intense. Dogfights, air battles happened every day. Planes twisted and turned in the air, trying to shoot each other down. Pilots had only seconds to react before they were either victorious or falling from the sky. By August 1940, the Luftwaffe had almost won. The British RAF was close to breaking. Then something unexpected happened. A German plane accidentally bombed London instead of a military target. It was a mistake, but it changed the entire war. In response, Britain bombed Berlin, the capital of Nazi Germany. Hitler was furious. He could not believe that British bombs had hit his city. He wanted revenge. So he made a terrible decision. Instead of destroying the RAF, Hitler ordered the Luftwaffe to only bomb cities like London. This gave the RAF time to recover. They repaired airfields, built more planes, and trained new pilots. By September 1940, Britain was stronger than ever. And on September 15, 1940, the Luftwaffe launched its biggest attack yet. Over 1,500 German planes filled the sky. But the British were ready. Hundreds of RAF fighters rose into the air. The skies over Britain became a battlefield. For hours, planes clashed in the air. Machine guns fired. Planes exploded. Pilots fought for their lives. By the end of the day, Germany had lost more than 60 planes, while Britain had lost only 26. The Luftwaffe had failed. For the first time, Hitler had lost. After the battle, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill gave one of the most famous speeches in history. He stood before the British people and said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." He was talking about the brave RAF pilots who had risked their lives to save Britain. The people of Britain now had hope. And Hitler? He was furious. Losing the Battle of Britain was a huge blow to Hitler's ego. He believed he was invincible, that nobody could stop him. But now, for the first time, someone had stopped him. And Hitler couldn't accept it. This is when his megalomania, a dangerous obsession with power and control, became worse. He became even more aggressive. He started making irrational decisions. He refused to listen to his generals. His mind was filled with one thought: I will crush Britain no matter what it takes. But instead of focusing on Britain, Hitler turned his attention elsewhere. Hitler had always hated communism, and he believed that Britain was only still fighting because it hoped for help from the Soviet Union. So Hitler made a bold decision. Instead of continuing the war against Britain, he would attack the Soviet Union. He thought that by crushing the Soviet Union, Britain would lose hope and surrender. His new plan was to invade the Soviet Union by the summer of 1941. But what he didn't realize was that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life, because the Soviet Union was not an easy enemy to defeat, and what awaited him in Russia would destroy him. Hitler thought the Soviet Union was weak. He called their army the Red Army of Cowards. He believed he could defeat them in just a few months. On June 22, 1941, Hitler sent over 3 million German soldiers to attack the Soviet Union. It was the biggest invasion in history. His plan was called Operation Barbarossa. Hitler's goal was simple: capture Moscow, the Soviet capital, destroy communism forever. At first, everything went exactly as Hitler had planned. The German army moved fast. Their tanks, called panzers, raced across Soviet land. Their planes, the Luftwaffe, bombed everything in their path. The Soviet soldiers were not ready. Many didn't even have proper weapons. Some had to fight with their bare hands. By September 1941, Hitler's army had reached Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, in the north. In the center, they were moving towards Moscow. In the south, they had almost captured Ukraine. Hitler was confident. He told his generals, "The Soviet Union is finished." But he didn't realize his biggest nightmare was about to begin. Hitler had made a huge mistake. He thought the Soviet Union would be easy to conquer, but he did not understand 3 things. 1. The Soviet Union was huge. Germany had to fight across thousands of kilometers. 2. The Soviet people would never give up. They would fight until death. 3. The Russian winter was coming, and it was the deadliest winter in history. By October 1941, German soldiers were freezing in the cold. Their tanks couldn't move because the fuel was frozen. Their guns wouldn't fire because of the ice. And worst of all, they had no winter clothes. Hitler had not prepared for winter. He had thought he would win the war before it even arrived. But the Soviets were ready. In December 1941, German soldiers were just 30 kilometers away from Moscow. They could see the towers of the city. Victory was so close. But then, something incredible happened. The Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin, ordered a massive counterattack. From the east, thousands of fresh Soviet soldiers arrived. They were dressed in warm winter uniforms. They were used to the freezing cold. The German soldiers were exhausted, starving, and frozen. On December 5th, 1941, the Soviet army attacked. The Germans were forced to retreat. It was their first big defeat on land. Hitler was shocked. He had never lost a land battle before. This was the first sign that Germany was not invincible. After this defeat, Hitler became even more paranoid. He stopped listening to his generals. He executed officers who disagreed with him. He believed he was the only one who could win the war. Instead of retreating, Hitler made a crazy decision. He decided to attack another city, Stalingrad. And this would be the biggest disaster of his life. Hitler wanted revenge for his failure in Moscow. So he chose to attack Stalingrad, a city in southern Russia. Why? Because the city was named after Joseph Stalin, the Soviet leader. Hitler thought, if I destroy Stalingrad, I destroy Stalin. In August 1942, Hitler sent over 1 million soldiers to capture the city. At first, it looked like Germany would win easily. The Luftwaffe bombed Stalingrad non-stop. The city was burning. It looked like hell on earth. The German army entered the city and started fighting in the streets. They thought the Soviets would surrender quickly, but they were wrong. The Soviet soldiers refused to give up. They fought for every building, every street, every room. Some soldiers even hid in the sewers to attack German troops by surprise. The battle was so brutal that soldiers had to fight with knives, hammers, and even bricks. By November 1942, the German army controlled 90% of Stalingrad. Victory was almost theirs. But then, disaster struck. The Soviet commander, General Zhukov, had a brilliant plan. While the Germans were busy fighting inside the city, the Soviet army secretly gathered outside the city. On November 19, 1942, they launched a massive attack from both sides. The Germans were completely surrounded. They had nowhere to escape. They were trapped. For 2 months, the Germans begged Hitler to let them surrender. But Hitler said no. You will fight to the last man. By February 1943, the German army was starving, freezing, and dying. Their commander, General Paulus, finally made a decision. On February 2, 1943, he surrendered. It was the biggest defeat in German history. The Battle of Stalingrad was a turning point in World War II. Before this battle, Germany had always won. After this battle, Germany started losing. Over 800,000 German soldiers were killed or captured. The Soviet Union proved that Germany was not unstoppable. And Hitler, he was humiliated. He became even more insane. But the worst part? Now the entire world knew he could be defeated. And soon, the Allies would start planning the attack that would destroy him forever. Hitler was no longer the invincible dictator he thought he was. He was losing, and the whole world knew it. But he refused to accept the truth. On December 7th, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, an American naval base. This was a huge mistake. America, the most powerful country in the world, was now officially in the war. Hitler thought America was weak. He thought they wouldn't be a problem. But he was wrong. America had millions of soldiers, thousands of tanks, and more weapons than any other country. And now, they were coming for Germany. For years, Hitler had controlled most of Europe. But the Allies had a plan. They would launch a massive attack on the beaches of Normandy, France, and take back Europe from Hitler. This attack was called D-Day. On June 6, 1944, at 6:30 a.m., the battle began. Over 156,000 Allied soldiers stormed the beaches. It was the biggest invasion in history. Hitler's army was waiting for them. Machine guns, bombs, and snipers rained down on the soldiers as they ran onto the sand. But the Allies kept going. They fought with everything they had. By the end of the day, they had won. France was free. And now, nothing could stop them from reaching Germany. Hitler was terrified. He knew his time was running out. The Allies were closing in. From the west, the American and British forces were marching towards Berlin. From the east, the Soviet Red Army was destroying everything in its path. Hitler had one last chance. In December 1944, he launched a surprise attack called the Battle of the Bulge. It was his final attempt to push the Allies back. At first, it worked. The Germans attacked with everything they had. They pushed the Americans back for a moment. But then, the Americans fought back. Within a month, Germany had lost again. Now there was nothing left to stop the Allies. By April 1945, the Soviet army had reached Berlin. The city was on fire. Bombs were falling every second. Hitler knew it was over, but he refused to surrender. Instead, He hid in a bunker deep underground. For days, he listened to the sounds of bombs exploding above him. His own soldiers had abandoned him. His closest friends had given up. And then, on April 30th, 1945, he made his final decision. Hitler and his wife, Eva Braun, sat in their bunker. At 3:30 p.m., he took out a pistol, and he shot himself in the head. The man who wanted to rule the world was now dead. 1 week later, on May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered. The war in Europe was over. People ran into the streets crying, laughing, and celebrating. The nightmare was finally over. But there was still one last enemy left. Even though Germany had lost, Japan was still fighting. They refused to surrender. So, America made a terrible decision. On August 6, 1945, they dropped an atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima, Japan. 80,000 people died instantly. 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, they dropped another bomb on Nagasaki, Japan. 70,000 more people died. The world had never seen destruction like this before. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered. World War II was over. This was the deadliest war in human history. Over 60 million people died.